Welcome to the Titans of Industry show. Today I have a treat for you guys. It's Robert David Steele. He's a former Marine Corps infantry officer. He's a former spy. He's the co-founder of the Marine Corps Intelligence Center and a long-time champion of the open source intelligence. Became a political activist in 2008, and today he is a supporter of President Trump since July of 2015. He published many important articles and many important memorandums, and we'll talk about them today. He's a Nobel Prize nominee, and I'm very glad that he's been able to carve 30 minutes out of his schedule here to talk with us about what's going on right now with the presidency, whether or not Trump can be reelected in less than 4 years, and about what he's doing currently to help America become great again. How are you, Robert?
Oh, good. Glad to be with you.
I'm glad you're here with us, and I want to start with Unrig. What exactly is that?
Well, Cynthia and I have been working for a long time to defeat the two-party tyranny. I had to run for president. Cynthia McKinney. I had to run for president in 2012 to realize that we have 8 accredited political parties in the United States. The other 6 that are blocked from any meaningful role in our false democracy are the Constitution, Green, Libertarian, Natural Law, Reform, and Socialist parties. And so I became the champion for the Election Reform Act. And when Donald Trump said publicly that our system is rigged, overnight the hashtag unrig became popular. And I really urge your listeners to look that up. They can learn a lot more there, and they will certainly see the manifesto that Cynthia and I have published, which has 4 or 5 graphics plus 4 or 5 paragraphs on what every American can do this summer to take the power back.
Sure. And look, I want to speak to you about the memorandum for the President 3.0. You've said that there's 9 ways to immediately change the rules and win. And I want to ask you, how much of the American public do you think cares about these kinds of topics, and how much are too far gone?
Well, nobody's ever too far gone, but that's a very, very good question that you've asked. The bottom line is that roughly 50% of the eligible voters have dropped out and no longer participate. This is for several reasons, including that we have a lot of uneducated, drunken, inattentive voters who just don't care. We have a lot of voters that have been repressed, deliberately repressed, not only black voters, but also white voters. Both parties try to repress voters who they absolutely know will support the other party. But the third reason is we have a false democracy. We have a lot of smart voters that realize that we live in a two-party tyranny and that the U.S. government is in enemy hands. The U.S. government is owned by the Rothschild family and the Vatican, and they use Wall Street in the United States, the City of London in the United Kingdom, to basically control the government. The U.S. government right now is a way for Wall Street to pick the pocket of the American taxpayer. And that's what Cynthia and I want to stop. Now, with Donald Trump as our legitimately elected president, we are hoping to present him, and that's the reason we've sent him this 3rd memorandum. We're hoping to present our president with a game plan for this summer that will allow Donald Trump to crush the two-party tyranny, create a broad base of everyone across this country who agrees that our common enemy is the deep state, and go on to be the greatest president ever.
So, in the memorandum, I see that one of the ways that you want to create this is to cut and abolish the NSA. What's the problem with that agency?
Well, let me start by saying that the first 3 things that we emphasize in the memorandum are his championing the Election Reform Act, together with Ron Paul, Dennis Kucinich, Jesse Ventura, Ralph Nader, Patrick Buchanan, Virgil Goode, Jill Stein, and a whole bunch of other people. The second thing we recommend is a Trump channel that bypasses the fake news media, especially Crap News Network. And the third thing that we recommend is a counterintelligence surge, because he is surrounded by traitors. And I explicitly include Vice President Mike Pence, who represents the Bush family and the neoconservatives, General Herbert McMaster, who has committed treason in fostering a false flag attack in Syria to try and justify American troops there. And of course, Reince Priebus, who has been stabbing the president in the back since December. Now,
just to stop you for a sec, when you say treason, do you mean that these people do not have the American people at heart? They're globalists? Is that what you mean?
No, I mean committing an act of treason. I'm very explicit on this. I have published the story about how John McCain, John Brennan, and Herbert McMaster, working with General Petraeus, who works for the Zionist firm KKR in New York, they collaborated to get Saudi Arabia and Israel to pay $300,000 to $400,000 to the White Helmets, who then did a false flag attack in Syria, intended to deceive our president into ordering 150,000 troops into Syria, which is the worst possible thing we could do. I accuse General McMaster, John McCain, and John Brennan of being traitors who should be indicted, court-martialed, and sent to jail.
Okay, going back to the NSA then.
Okay, so now the NSA is the fourth item on our memorandum. The National Security Agency has been spying on and blackmailing U.S. politicians and judges for over 15 years. In the aftermath of 9/11, they have also been conducting unconstitutional mass surveillance against all Americans. They have every email and every phone call made by every American the last 15 years. Now, the good news is they haven't processed all of that. It's just sitting idle in the data. But the NSA is an agency that was created by a presidential executive order. It has no legislative mandate from Congress. What this means is that Donald Trump could literally shut down the NSA tomorrow and end not only the blackmail of our members of Congress, but the mass surveillance of the American people. This is one of the things he could do to demonstrate to the alt-left, to the Sandinistas and the progressives, that he truly wants to be a president for all Americans, not just the alt-right.
Understood. Now, Robert, you said that they are bribing judges and politicians for 15 years. Is there any indictments against them, or is this all being swept under the rug?
That's a lovely question. The short answer is no, there are no indictments against them, although they have been publicly accused by William Binney, who is my NSA counterpart, and others. In fact, William Binney filed an Inspector General's report against NSA. Michael Hayden is the only man who has run two agencies and violated the Constitution both times. Michael Hayden violated the Constitution at NSA with warrantless surveillance, and he violated the Constitution at CIA with rendition and torture. This is a man who needs to be deeply ashamed of himself and should never be appearing on the fake news media. What we have right now is the beginning of a presidential working group on the secret intelligence community. And I don't know where it's going to go, but I will tell you that if it goes the way that I hope it goes, not only will NSA be closed, but also the National Reconnaissance Office and the National Geospatial Agency. We will cut all three agencies by 70%. And the 30% that's worth saving will be rolled into CIA as new directorates. CIA and the Defense Intelligence Agency need to be cut in half before being built back up. And you would have a third element, which would be the open source agency. So the CIA would become the classified intelligence agency and would have under one director all of the classified intelligence collection disciplines. The Defense Intelligence Agency would become the National Processing and Analysis Agency, and it would be responsible for processing 100% of everything we collect in both classified and unclassified terms, and for doing serious analysis, which it does not do today. Nobody does serious analysis today. The third agency is the one that I would like to create. It's the one that CIA has fought me on for 30 years. The Open Source Agency would provide 90% of the intelligence that the president, the cabinet, and the public and Congress need to make evidence-based decisions about all policies from agriculture to water against all threats, the top three of which are poverty, infectious disease, and environmental degradation. We have an intelligence community today that is not only out of control in constitutional terms, it's a cesspool where we are wasting money to produce what General Tony Zinni said was at best 4% of what anyone needs. So the secret intelligence community has become like a secret police. The CIA is responsible for massive crimes against humanity, including drone assassinations that kill 98% innocents. It is working with Saudi Arabia and Israel to continue to do rendition and torture. It is smuggling drugs, guns, gold, cash, and small children for the elite, using the 1,000 military bases around the world that are really there to serve as lily pads for CIA smuggling. They don't contribute anything to our military defense posture. So on balance, I think we're finally at the beginning of unrigging the system, destroying the two-party tyranny, destroying the deep state, which is actually the Rothschilds of the Vatican all the way down through the banks to the two-party tyranny, the secret intelligence communities, and the complicit media, and perhaps creating a smart government that is half the size, that gets off of the backs of the American people and begins to actually serve as a service of common concern to the states. We are the United States of America, not the United Mob of America. And there was absolutely no intent on the part of the founding fathers to create an imperial power in Washington that would tell the states what to do. It's the states that are supposed to be telling the federal government what to do.
I have two questions regarding this. My first question is the type of operations that you're referring to, smuggling children, gold, drugs, cash. These require thousands and thousands of people to be in the know. Is this what it is?
Well, first off, you're wrong. To smuggle gold, for example, you only require about 10 people. Because what happens is that CIA tells the military that they have a national security cargo. And so the military provides an airplane and the hundreds of people that support that airplane without knowing anything at all about the cargo. And even within CIA, 80 to 90% of the people that are facilitating that cargo have no knowledge of what's actually in the cargo. Are you with me? So it doesn't actually take more than 10 people. One of the things I am constantly pointing out is that CIA, like the rest of the U.S. government, is 90% good people trapped in a bad system. It's only the rogue elements that are committing great crimes. But unfortunately, and I really like David Talbot's book, The Devil's Chessboard, I recommend it to everyone. CIA was created by Wall Street to be a foundation for secret evil buried within the U.S. government. That's what it was in the 1950s, and that's what it is today. I'm attending a conference on the 3rd of June about the deep state, the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and lessons that Donald Trump could learn from this. The fact is that Donald Trump today is right where John F. Kennedy was, and he is as close to assassination as he wants to get. The good news is everything has changed. And I believe that we can create an exit strategy with truth and reconciliation for the elite. I believe we can do a counterintelligence surge and shut down the 500 traitors across the U.S. government, including all of the Bush family and neoconservatives led by Dick Cheney that have completely penetrated the Trump administration. And I think that we can, in fact, create a prosperous nation at peace. And that's why I'm high on Donald Trump, because he's not a deep state president. If the enemy of my enemy is my friend, then I would tell my progressive friends that Donald Trump is our friend. And I just came back from New York, where Cynthia McKinney arranged for a meeting between the black leaders and alt-right leaders, including myself and Judge Napolitano, who I really admire very much. The man has written a number of books on how our government is in gross violation of the Constitution. He's absolutely right. So I see a future in which alt-right and alt-left come together with blacks, Latinos, small parties, and independents to occupy the front lawns of every member of Congress this summer until each member either signs the Integrity Pledge promising to pass the Election Reform Act in September when Congress reconvenes, or we begin to turn each congressman that doesn't sign the pledge into a small pile of pus. And
how many people do you have rallied up?
Right now, 2, 3. Cynthia McKinney, Ellen Brown, and myself. What we are trying to do is we're about to start a 501c4 and a 527, and Ross Bernay, who ran United We Stand for Ross Perot, is in the wings ready to be our campaign manager. There are 3 billionaires that we want to approach, perhaps with help from a billionaire that we already know. But the bottom line for me is we want to turn this idea over to Donald Trump, our legitimately elected president. If Donald Trump were to announce an election reform summit on the 19th of June and have that summit at the end of June with people like Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich and Patrick Buchanan and so forth attending, and if he were to lead this charge all by himself, but ideally barnstorming the country, 50 states in 30 days, accompanied by Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich and Cynthia McKinney and Jesse Ventura and Ralph Nader and others, I don't think this is a battle that he can lose. The people are angry, and this is our God-given opportunity to execute an ethical, legal, nonviolent revolution and take back the party, take back the power. We, and this is not a party, it's a movement, we, the people, can take back the power by confronting the senators and representatives when they are at home for the summer recess and cannot avoid their constituents as they have been for so many years.
That's very logical. I'd like to ask you, because I don't see in the memorandum or anywhere else a mention of the Federal Reserve, and to me,
yes, absolutely brilliant that you asked that.
I haven't asked it yet, but my question is, Robert, money is very important.
Right. Now, we don't have to spend a lot of time on that. I absolutely believe that our president should nationalize the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve, and by the way, one of the reasons you have to do the Election Reform Act is because Congress right now is being bribed and blackmailed by Wall Street and will never pass any law nationalizing the Federal Reserve unless it is first freed from Wall Street. So the Election Reform Act makes possible the nationalization of the Federal Reserve, which is what I've recommended in Thailand, the Philippines, Indonesia, and everywhere else. It is absolutely essential.
Is the Federal Reserve today what type of an entity is it?
It is a private entity owned by the Rothschild family. I mean, the Federal Reserve is a private organization. It's neither the Federal nor the Reserve. It is basically comprised of private banks who are all run by people appointed by the Rothschilds with the consent and concurrence of the Vatican. Okay? So the Federal Reserve is essentially a monstrous evildoer in the heart of America. And the only way we're going to stop the banks from rigging the system by manipulating interest rates and manipulating foreign exchange rates and creating derivatives that cheat the public out of money. The stock market is a casino run by Wall Street for Wall Street, and the people are the chumps. So nationalizing the Federal Reserve is absolutely one of the top 3 or 4 priorities for any president who wants to unrig the system.
Do you think personally that the American public wants to get close to the Constitution?
I don't think most of the American public knows what the Constitution is. And that's a failure on the part of government over the last 100 years. Plato is very clear in saying that the highest responsibility of government is to assure an educated public. And that's what our founding fathers believed, that a nation's best defense is an informed citizenry. So one of the reasons I'm so high on creating a Trump channel is because I believe that we need, during the first term of the Trump administration, we need to create a massive public re-education effort that is focused on the Constitution and restoring the Republic.
I understand. I see that you, in your memorandum, you talk about the federal legalization of marijuana. Why is that important?
Well, marijuana is, and I said this in a movie. I've been in a number of movies, but one of them really stands out, which is America's Last White Hope, the war on drugs. Marijuana is at the seam of the deep state telling us to do what they want because they say so, and common sense and reality in the public interest. Marijuana and hemp when they are made illegal, become a foundation for great crimes. And I would include cocaine as well. The bottom line for me is that there is absolutely no scientific evidence that marijuana is in any way, shape, or form bad for you. In fact, there's a lot of scientific evidence that shows that it cures cancer and cures Alzheimer's and does a lot of good things. Hemp is an industrial product that allows you to create many wondrous things without chlorine and plastic and oil. And therefore, marijuana and hemp are in fact part of a dual solution. On the one hand, reducing crime, and on the other hand, making industrial progress without such great true economic costs, which is what's characteristic of the Western industrial paradigm possible. So even though Jeff Sessions has a hard-on for marijuana, I think ultimately this brilliant attorney general who's doing a wonderful job going after the elite pedophiles, I think Jeff Sessions will come to see that the public wants marijuana legalized. And when I was one of the 4,000 who participated in Obama's fraudulent open government initiative, the absolute number one demand of the public in the open government initiative was the immediate legalization of marijuana across the land.
Interesting. Another thing that is important here is you want to ask all indebted Americans to authorize you to renegotiate all their debts.
Not to authorize me, to authorize our legitimately elected president.
Yes, correct. To authorize the president, of course. So if Wall Street doesn't play ball, you want to cancel the debt and
declare a debt jubilee in keeping with the Bible.
So you want to cancel the debt according to the Bible and issue all citizens presidential pardons. And you're talking student debts, family, credit cards, elderly, medicinal.
Yes.
The type of suggestions that are in this memorandum, what do you think their implications are if the president does pursue them on the global markets? These are
forget about global markets. Forget about global markets. This is about U.S. citizen debt to U.S. banks. Don't confuse this. This is about U.S. citizen debt to U.S. banks that have cheated the public ever since the Federal Reserve and the income tax were established. In fact, there's an excellent book called Fruits of Graft, which documents that the banks created the Great Depression in order to destroy the middle class, concentrate wealth, and increase their power over the government. I cannot overstate for your listeners the degree of evil represented by the Rothschilds, the Vatican, and Wall Street, as well as its counterpart in England, the City of London. If the president were to take on all of these initiatives holistically, altogether, not only would he be the greatest president ever, but he would create a prosperous America at peace, and he would open the way for working with Russia, China, Indonesia, and others, and Modi in India, to create a prosperous world at peace. What we have right now is a world that Huxley described as animal farm. All of us are animals for the bankers. It's time to stop that. It's time to kill the deep state.
Robert, in closing, do you have anything else that you want to share with us?
Well, I would say to everyone that if they search for hashtag unrigged, #unrigged, they'll get right to the manifesto that Cynthia and I have written. If they search for Memorandum for the President 3.0, they'll get right to the memorandum that Cynthia has refined for the president, and he has read it. And finally, of course, I appreciate any donations. My personal website is robertdavidsteele.com. And my blog, which has over 80 regular contributors, 800 all told, is phi-beta-iota.net. It's free with no ads ever.
Robert David Steele, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
God bless you, God bless America, and God bless both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. They opened everyone's eyes.